Why do the Amish only go to 8th grade and all the English kids have to go to 12th grade? That's because of Wisconsin versus Yoder, a Supreme Court case back in the 1970s, where the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that the Amish were entitled to have their own education system based on the fact that they had been doing so for a while, and that even though a lot of Amish kids didn't finish high school, they were still self-sufficient and they did not need any handouts from the government in order to survive. They were able to, a lot of them had businesses or they had farms, and they were able to make a living. And then, like the elderly, the community, or the children take care of the elderly. So there was never a case where the government had to step in and say, hey, we have to help out these people because they're not educated enough. Clearly, they had their own system in place, and they didn't need help from the government. That is why the government said it was okay for them to have their own education system. Now, we do have to learn in English, and that is why we learned to read and write in English. We didn't learn to read and write in our own language, in the Amish language, or the Pennsylvania Dutch. We did also learn to read and write a little bit of German, at least in my community. But yes, at 8th grade, I started 8th grade at 12 years old. By the time I finished 8th grade, I was 13. And when I was 14, I started my first job. And I think I learned more in those 4 years, from 14 to 18, working at a furniture shop and then also working construction. I learned a couple different trades there and things that I could not have learned in a high school. So I think the way that I was raised up with an 8th grade education and then spent the next 4 years working was the Amish homeschool. That's all we really need. So a lot of Amish people do not homeschool their children. They have Amish schools they send them to. And normally, though, the teacher is not educated any more than the 8th grade education. It would be a graduate of 8th grade, maybe from that same schoolhouse a few years earlier. And 16 was the minimum age to be allowed to teach normally. So you would leave school at 14, and at 16 they would be teaching. And then a lot of the girls would get married by the time they were 20 or 21 years old. So unless a girl did not get married, sometimes when there was an old maid, what you call a woman who didn't get married, she would teach school for many years. And but other than that, usually the school teachers were all young. They didn't ever teach for more than 3 or 4 years. I know my mom taught like 4 years, but she also taught me in 8th grade then, because our teacher was in the process of moving in from Wisconsin, and they weren't going to move until a few weeks after school started, maybe like 3 weeks later. So my mom stepped in and was the teacher during that time. But I remember we were playing softball and she was the pitcher because she didn't want to hit and run and stuff like that, or bat. So she was always pitching for both sides. And we had a rule where you wouldn't throw it to the base to try to get somebody out. You throw it to the pitcher, and then that means the runners have to stop. Because a lot of times there was little kids playing and they might miss the ball. So the runner had to stop. You would just get the ball back to the pitcher. I said I was halfway between second or third, and the defense said I wasn't. So I was telling my mom, like, I was here. She's like, show me where you were. And I walked over there, and I was like right here. And she reached out. She had walked over there too. She had the ball. She reached out and tagged me and said, now you're out. Go sit down. And I couldn't argue with her. I was out, and she got me. She tricked me into getting off the base. Anyway, God bless you all. Stay safe.